So, how did a Jew become a Nazi? Because this is not something you would normally hear, that a man of Jewish descent would grow up to become a Nazi. And I think the best place to start is with a quote from John F. Kennedy. After visiting these two places, you can easily see how that within a few years, Hitler will emerge from the hatred that surrounds him now as one of the most significant figures who ever lived. He had boundless ambition for his country, which rendered him a menace to the peace of the world. But he had a mystery about him in the way that he lived and in the manner of his death that will live and grow after him. He had in him the stuff of which legends are made. So let's draw a connection to Hitler and John F. Kennedy. On June 4th, 1963, President Kennedy ordered Executive Order 11110, allowing him and the U.S. Treasury to issue silver-backed currency. This would free Americans from the Federal Reserve Bank. About 5 months later, President Kennedy would be murdered for the nations to see, and his assassins would never really be caught. 3 years later, his younger brother, Senator Robert Kennedy, would meet a similar fate, as would John F. Kennedy's son, John Kennedy Jr., whose plane exploded in 1999. President Kennedy not only admired Adolf Hitler, but tried to copy him by taking back the nation's right to print their own currency backed by something real. President Kennedy's father was Joseph Kennedy, and he was the ambassador to England as war was being declared on Nazi Germany. He personally knew Adolf Hitler and was known as Germany's best friend in London. After the war broke out, Joseph Kennedy tried to arrange a meeting with Hitler and was fired shortly after. So we have a murdered president who praised Adolf Hitler and tried to cut out the Federal Reserve Bank. We have his brother, a murdered senator, who wanted to do the same thing. And we have his son who mysteriously died. And the father of the murdered president happened to know Adolf Hitler and was fired when the war started for trying to talk to him. So what caused the war? Hitler didn't invade Poland for world domination as much as he invaded Poland to save and unite the German people who were trapped within Poland thanks to the Treaty of Versailles. I don't know how a sane, rational person could look at the division of Germany according to the Treaty of Versailles and think that this division could possibly work. Now, the German Jews played a major role in Germany's defeat in World War I because they held key positions in Germany, mainly in media and finance. After Germany was tricked into defeat, Germany was raped and torn apart. Their gold supply was plundered to pay for the war that they never wanted. Their technologies were stolen and their land was ripped apart and given to other countries. Not only did they make Germany pay for the entire war, but they seized some of Germany's most valuable land and resources that could have helped them pay off this debt. Remember, Germany never wanted war. They were simply defending their Austrian-Hungarian allies who declared war on Serbia after their Archduke and Duchess were publicly murdered. After the war, the Allies purposely separated Germany from their eastern part, Prussia, making it impossible for the Germans to reach their fellow countrymen without going through Poland first. All you would have to do is look at the way Palestine was divided to see its simple warfare: divide them and conquer them. The Versailles Treaty was a recipe for slavery and war, which the Allies knew. After World War I, white Christian Europe was in ruins. The next generation of Europe was decimated by war, while every country was indebted to Jewish-operated banks. The only people to actually win anything from World War I were Jewish bankers, who not only made a fortune off the war, but managed to conquer Russia and Palestine. The Jews haven't occupied Palestine since they crucified Jesus about 2,000 years ago. So make no mistake that the events today are connected to Jesus and the Great Revolt of Judea in 70 AD. The 1917 Balfour Declaration promises the Rothschild Jewish banking family the land of Palestine if England should win the war, as the Israeli flag waves the Rothschild's family star known as the Red Shield, or Rothschild in German. To people in the West, this star is known as the Star of David, but Jews call it the Magin David, which means the Shield of David. Now, there's nothing in the Bible that says this is the symbol of Israel. In fact, it's only mentioned in the Bible one time when the Israelites are punished for using it. This star actually represents an evil god that requires human sacrifice. Now, this is the same banking family who financed Napoleon in the Napoleonic Wars, as they still remain personal advisors to the so-called Christian monarchs of Great Britain. So please understand that the Queen of England, whose entire oath and power depends on Jesus Christ, the Bible, and keeping the Commonwealth Christian, is advised by Jewish bankers, the Jews who murdered Jesus and slaughtered anyone who believed in him. The Rothschilds were also once displayed on Israel's currency, as Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv is one of the most expensive streets in the world. Now, Queen Elizabeth II only became queen because her uncle Edward VIII abdicated the throne. Why is this important? Since the time King Ecgbert united England in the 800s, never in all of British history has a king willingly abdicated the throne without a fight. Now, there would be an assassination attempt on King Edward's life, and a few months later, he would do what no other monarch in all of British history would do, and that's abdicate the throne willingly. King Edward VIII and Adolf Hitler were actually friends, and together they could have united Christian Europe against the Jewish empire that was and is ruling Christianity from the shadows. Now, while the international Jewish bankers had plunged the world into the man-made Great Depression, weakening the whole world, Nazi Germany flourished. Hitler had removed all the Jews from key positions of power like banking, politics, and media. The country flourished simply by removing the Jews from power and restoring Germans to what was rightfully theirs. Banking, media, and politics. These are three crucial areas that should never be in the hands of foreigners. It is the duty of all countries, whether you're from the United States, Germany, Russia, Nigeria, or China. It is up to the people of these nations to guard these positions at all costs from foreigners, starting with controlling the nation's currency. For once a nation parts with its control of currency and credit, it matters not who makes that nation's laws. Likewise with the media has the power to sway public opinion by bending the truth, removing key facts, or just flat out lying to you, causing the people to make bad decisions based on bad information. Having the power over the nation's currency, you can buy up all the nation's media. With the media, you can make or break a politician. By controlling the politicians, you have gained control over the lawmakers of that nation, and the rest comes with it. Schools, factories, law enforcement, religion, and even military. Give me control of a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws. Now, if I moved to a foreign country, I wouldn't mind being called a second-class citizen. I would just be happy to be there. If I willingly left my country to join a new one for a better future, why should I be allowed to vote in that country? Why should I be allowed to control their laws or demand a job in their government? Why should I be allowed to impose my religion or my culture? If you invite someone to be a guest in your house and this person changes what's for dinner, demands that they sleep in your master bedroom, they demand that you redecorate your house according to what they want. They demand that you pray to their God under your roof. They demand you give them your hard-earned money, while they impregnate your daughters, forever changing the cultural, spiritual, and racial demographic of your people. No, this isn't a guest. This is an invader. A guest would respect your household and be thankful that you took them in when their own country and people failed them. So in every country, it doesn't matter where you are from, you need to guard your financial institutions, your media, and your politicians. And only men and women who place the country first should be allowed to hold these key positions. Actions speak louder than words. A politician who gains power based on promises that they then break, in most cases, is a traitor. They should be removed from office, thrown in jail, and maybe even killed for treason. Or else, don't become a politician. Now, in the United States, today and at the time of World War II, the media, banks, and politicians were almost completely controlled by Jews. In the media, we had CBS being run by Jew William Samuel Paley. NBC was being run by Jew David Sarnoff. The New York Times was being run by Jew Adolph Oakes and Arthur Sulzberger. And during the first 3 years of the Great Depression, we had Jew Eugene Mayer as the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank, which was the root of the Great Depression. So while this Jewish man helped plunge the world into the greatest economic crisis in world history, he managed to find the money to buy up the Washington Post while it was going bankrupt. He was later rewarded for his treacherous behavior by becoming the first president of the World Bank, and he also tried to hide the fact that he was Jewish. Now, Jew Bernard Baruch was advisor to President Roosevelt, just like he advised President Woodrow Wilson to create the Federal Reserve Bank. So from banking to politics to media, the Jews were in full control of Christian America. So understand that, America. All your information about World War II and Nazi Germany that you think you know came from Jews. There wasn't a single Christian American who heard the news without it going through a Jewish filter first. Americans did not control their own media, nor their banks, and the American presidents were being advised by Jews, no different than today, and this was Hitler's point. Now, the Germans understood this Jewish game very well, for the Germans had gone through the same thing after World War I. The Jews had destroyed Germany. The Jewish communist revolutionaries had tried to violently take Germany right after World War I. Kurt Eisner, Rosa Luxemburg, and Paul Levy, these were just some of the Jewish communist leaders. Now, under the Jewish-controlled Weimar Republic, where the Jews were overrepresented in every field like they are today, Berlin became the prostitution and drug capital of the world. It was normal to find pregnant girls or even mothers and daughters prostituting themselves together in order to survive. It was normal to see men dressing like women as pedophiles roamed the streets. The Jewish bankers had hyperinflated the German currency to a point where a wheelbarrow of money couldn't buy you a loaf of bread. And in major cities like Berlin, men were committing suicide faster than babies being born. So imagine you're a young child in Germany. Your mother and sisters are out prostituting themselves so you can eat. Your eldest brother was just killed in World War I, which was financed by Jewish bankers. Your father has just committed suicide because of greedy Jewish bankers who collapsed the German economy in order to buy up all the German businesses and enslave Germany. Your other brother is downtown Berlin dressed like a woman entertaining homosexuals. And the Jewish communist revolutionaries are trying to take over your country. Oh, and you're probably starving because there is no food. The farmers had just lost their land, businesses, and savings. So please stop and think about that. You see, the Jews are always crying about being persecuted, but all we have to do is ask why and look at the facts. It's not hard to understand where the expression, "you Jewed me," came from. Now, nobody has the right to hate Jews more than the Russians. In 1917, the Jews conquered the Russian Empire under the name Bolshevism or Communism. Before the rise of communism, Jewish bankers relentlessly attacked the Russians and the Russian czars. Lionel de Rothschild, the great-grandfather of Queen Elizabeth's advisor today, would fund the French and Turks in the Crimean War in 1853 against the Russians, as Jewish banker Jacob Schiff, who worked for the Rothschilds, would fund the Japanese in the Russo-Japanese War. The Jews also financed the Freemason revolutionaries in 1825, known as the Decembrist Revolution, where the revolutionaries promised the Jews their own homeland if they managed to overthrow the Tsar. The Jews assassinated lots of Russians and nobles and launched another rebellion in 1905 that failed, causing the Jews to flee to Germany and America. Jews will often cry that the Tsar persecuted them and restricted them to the ghettos in the evil Pale of Settlement. However, all one has to do is read the Russian laws on the Jews from 1804 that gave the Jews religious freedom, the same rights as Christians, 10-year tax exemption, free land and farming equipment, and the right to go to any Russian school. A quick search will reveal to you that the Pale of Settlement wasn't some small ghetto that the Jews were just stuck in, but it was in fact a huge part of the Russian Empire containing some of Russia's best land. But that wasn't good enough for the Jews. They wanted full control of Christian Russia. You see, the Jews hated the Christian Russians. It was the Tsar and the Christian Russians who stopped atheist Napoleon from taking over Europe. Napoleon was completely funded by the Jewish Rothschilds. Napoleon was known to the Jews as the Jewish Messiah. They called him the Great Liberator, who gave them equal rights to Christians in Christian nations. Napoleon was the first Zionist who made the first attempt to give the Rothschilds Palestine. It was the Jews and secret societies that caused the French Revolution and had the Christian monarchs of France killed, as churches were burnt down, priests were killed or forced into exile. This forced the Christian kings of Europe to unite to stop Napoleon and his Jewish Masonic supporters. In 1917, the Jews would have their revenge on the Tsar. Jewish bankers from the West would use Christian money to finance Jewish revolutionaries known as the Bolsheviks to wipe out the Tsar and Christianity from Russia. About 85% of the leaders of the Communist Party were Jews. Trotsky, Jew; Lenin, Jew; Sverdlov, Jew; Kaganovich, Jew; Yagoda, Jew; Yurovsky, Jew. Okay, Stalin wasn't a Jew, but the Jews love putting a non-Jew up front while screaming persecution in the back. It's the safest place for them to be. Stalin is often called an anti-Semite. However, he left several Jews controlling key positions in the Soviet Union. He was also the first leader to recognize the Jewish state of Israel, as Jews were the only people allowed to leave the Soviet Union, while anyone else who attempted to leave would be sent to the Russian gulags. Just keep screaming persecution, and people will believe it. World War I was a complete Jewish victory over the Christian world. The Jews had decimated the European Christians by financing this war. The Jews were now in full control of Russia, as England had guaranteed the Jewish Rothschilds a Jewish homeland in Palestine, exactly what Napoleon had tried to do before. About 17 million white European Christians would be killed, and about 20 million would be wounded, and for what? So the Jews can have Palestine? On top of that, the Jewish Revolution in Russia would kill between 5 to 10 million Christian Russians, and in 1932 to 1933, as Hitler was coming to power, Stalin and his Jewish serial killers would murder another 5 to 11 million Christians in a famine known as the Holodomor. They say that Russia has never been conquered, but it was, by foreign Jews pretending to be Russians, as they financed poor Russians to help them murder the Russian king, murder his daughters and crippled son, and rip out the heart of Russia, the Christian Orthodox Church. The Russians also had the largest gold supply in the world, now in Jewish control. The communist Jews invaded Spain, causing a Spanish civil war, slaughtering Catholics, nuns, and priests. The Jewish communists have just invaded China. China was plunged into a communist civil war. Now, the same Jewish psychopaths causing these problems around the world have just declared international war against you. That's right, it was the Jews who declared war on the Germans in 1933, 6 years before World War II started. What do? They removed your friend King Edward from power. Your friend Ambassador Kennedy was also removed. The Prime Minister of England, Neville Chamberlain, who also wanted peace, would resign from power and die immediately after, leaving warmonger Winston Churchill to rule in England, as the Jews held a monopoly on the world's media. What do? Well, Hitler removed all the Jews from power, and within just a few years he had created over 6 million well-paying jobs. He created a plan of public works that included flood control, repair of public and private buildings, construction of new roads, bridges, canals, car manufacturing, housing programs, the Autobahn highway system. He enforced animal rights. He created an international barter system that cut out all the Jewish banks, because the whole world at the time, just like today, wanted German quality products. Hitler created a currency and credit system backed by German labor, which was interest and debt-free. Hitler removed the communists from Germany and turned Germany into the most prosperous country in the world in a matter of just 2 to 4 years, while the rest of the world would suffer at the hands of Imperial Judaism. President Kennedy tried to take back the banks from the Jewish bankers, knowing it would free the American people, and he was brutally murdered for all the nations to see. The same thing happened recently in Libya with Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi was responsible for building the largest man-made irrigation system in the world, providing fresh water to his people across the country. Every Libyan owned a house by law. It was free for anyone to start a farming program where the government would support and encourage you. Medical care was free and high quality. Oil and gas was cheap. Electricity was free. Gaddafi raised the literacy rate from 20% to 86%. 25% of his citizens obtained university degrees. Women enjoyed the same rights as men. Islam was not enforced. Libya had its own central bank lending money to its citizens at 0% interest. Now, what got Gaddafi killed was when he tried to create the Bank of Africa, a bank designed to trade in gold and the resources of Africa, meaning the American dollar and euro would practically be worthless to the Africans, as Africa was to become debt-free. Now, Gaddafi also offered to keep the Africans out of Europe for about 4 billion euros a year. Not to mention, Africans wouldn't want to leave Africa if Gaddafi was creating jobs and prosperity. Do you understand the power the Jews have over America with the banks, media, and politicians? Could you imagine a president or prime minister doing 20% of what Gaddafi or Hitler did for their people? Which is interesting, for it was Gaddafi who openly blamed the Israelis for President Kennedy's assassination. Muammar Gaddafi was brutally murdered, he was beaten, tortured, and sodomized repeatedly with a knife as he helplessly watched his people bombed into submission. U.S. Ambassador John Stevens would also be killed. It's interesting how all the Muslim nations in the Middle East were moderate and thriving countries. It wasn't until Israel showed up that all the countries next to them began falling apart as radical Islam began mass murdering their fellow Muslims. Now, something that I find interesting is when the USS Maine exploded in 1898, the United States declared war on Spain. On May 7, 1915, when the RMS Lusitania was struck by a German U-boat, the Americans would eventually declare war on Germany. On December 7, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the Americans declared war on Japan. On July 31, 1964, the Vietnamese attacked the USS Maddox, causing the Americans to enter the Vietnam War. The Jewish-owned World Trade Towers would somehow collapse, causing the Americans to declare war on whoever the Jewish media told the Americans needed to be bombed. On June 8, 1967, during the Israeli Six-Day War, Israel would attack the USS Liberty by air and by sea, killing 34 U.S. sailors. However, war would not be declared on Israel. Nobody can attack Americans except for Israeli Jews. So, how did a Jew become a Nazi? It was when I was studying my own history, when I read about a man named Jesus, who was the first man in recorded history to stand up against the Jewish bankers. And the pattern is pretty simple to see. Kennedy, Gaddafi, Abraham Lincoln, Adolf Hitler, and many others were brutally murdered in public simply for going against the Jewish banks and the Jewish media. Now, before the Jews murdered Jesus, Jesus warned the Jews that Jerusalem and their temple would be destroyed. In the end, the Roman Europeans would destroy Jerusalem, and Europe would come to worship the man who the Jews rejected and killed, bringing Christianity to Europe. The Nazi salute comes from the Romans, as does the German eagle, as the German soldiers wore belt buckles with the words "God with us" written on them. All Europeans are the descendants of the Roman Empire, who the Jews blame for losing their land and temple in the first place. This war between the Jews and Christian Europeans began almost 2,000 years ago. The Europeans have just forgotten there was a war. Hitler never claimed that the Germans were the superior race. It was the Jews who called themselves that, God's chosen people. It wasn't Hitler or the Germans who wanted to conquer the world. It's the Jews who have actually managed to do that, while screaming they are the victims. It wasn't the Christians who tried to exterminate the Jews. It was the Jews who did that to the Christians. I was told my whole life that Hitler would have gassed me and my family if he had won the war. I was told that the Nazis killed anyone who was 1/8 Jewish. But how can that be true if over 150,000 Jews, half Jews, and quarter Jews served in Hitler's army? Jews served in the SS. Jews were Nazi officers. Hitler's bodyguard and chauffeur was half Jewish. Many of his top generals and field marshals were Jewish as well. Nobody hated the Jews for being Jewish. They hated the evil being done in their country. Jews just happened to be at the center of the evil as Jewish communism threatened to take over the world. We have been spoon-fed the Jewish version of the story since the day we were born. Remember, World War II started to free Poland, yet Poland was never freed. The official story of World War II is based on the Allies saving the Polish from the evil Nazi Germans. Two countries invaded Poland, Nazi Germany and the Jewish Soviet Union. However, the Allies only declared war on Nazi Germany, which happened to be the only country in Europe that defied the Jewish bankers. In the end, the Jewish Soviet Union would slaughter all the leaders of Poland and blame it on Hitler. The Polish were brutally conquered and remained slaves until the collapse of the Soviet Union. When Hitler saw that the Allies had only declared war on him and not Stalin and the Jews in the name of freeing Poland, he understood what was happening as the Jewish Soviet Union began placing tens of thousands of tanks and airplanes along the German border. I can proudly say that I owe my whole life to Adolf Hitler and the sacrifices made by the German people. I was blessed with the opportunity to grow up in a Christian country where the laws of God prevailed. As a child, I lived in safety. Nobody locked their doors. Divorce wasn't common. Sexual immorality and drugs existed only in secret. Everyone had good jobs. It was normal for families to go to church, and we were all proud of our country. Today, my streets are filled with crime and vandalism. I see homeless and mentally ill people harassing the people on the streets. People are lovers of themselves, as it becomes more and more rare to find people who place others before them. Drugs and alcohol are everywhere. Families are broken and divided. The youth are being sexualized younger and younger each year. The people spend half their money on paying their taxes under a financial system that no one really understands. The other half of their income goes to surviving, paying bills, and buying food. The leaders of my country have constructed tax-supported drug clinics and heroin injection sites. My leaders pray with Muslims, participate in sexual immorality parades, as mothers dress up their 8-year-old sons like whorish women to dance for homosexual pedophiles. My country is in debt. The youth were deceived by Marxist teachers to apply for student loans while all their jobs have been sent to communist China. The young European girls have no shame when they abort the future generation of European children. They are encouraged to mix with non-Europeans, even though white European women of childbearing age are only about 2% of the world's population. Men and women mistreat each other, and because we can't solve our problems amongst ourselves, the courthouses and the police grow each year. Now, I owe my whole life to Hitler and the German people. Had Hitler sent his army west instead of east, England and Germany would have exhausted each other, weakening each other to a point where Jewish communism would have taken all of Europe, England included. Hitler sent most of his army east, while the West stabbed him in the back by siding with the communist Jews. Now, even if the lies of Hitler are true, according to the official version of history, Stalin was still far worse, and yet our tax dollars supported him, and our men fought alongside his Jewish communists, knowing he was far worse. People say Hitler and Germany lost the war, but this isn't true. Hitler and the Germans wanted to keep Jewish communism out of Europe. But as the Germans held the line and almost destroyed Stalin's Jewish army, the Jews controlling the West would use their power to convince us to attack our German brothers. For the Anglo-Saxons, Franks, and Vikings were all once Germanic tribes. Like the Jews forced the Romans to crucify Jesus, so the Jews would convince us to crucify our German brothers who were trying to save us from Jewish communism, or Red Terror as it was called. The Germans weakened the communists so badly that they had to stop in Berlin, allowing the Western world to remain Christian for at least a few more decades. But now we see that cultural Marxism has almost taken over the Christian European world with a different strategy. Europeans and Americans are the children of the Roman Empire. You are the children of the greatest men and greatest empire that ever lived. Don't forget that. Now, I don't hate Jews. It's the opposite. I love them. They are my family. Some of my best friends are Israeli Jews. Understand that all throughout our history, Jews have been persecuted by their own rabbis and people. Nobody has treated the Jews worse than their fellow Jews. When Christianity began, it started with the Jews and Israelites in Judea, as the Jewish rabbis and priests began slaughtering any Jew who dared question what the Jewish authorities said. Had it not been for the Jews in Judea sacrificing their lives for Jesus, Europe never would have become Christian. Today, the Jews are still enslaved by the lies passed down by their families, rabbis, and traditions. So while history might be written by the victors, the truth has a funny way of striking back when you least expect it.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
Parteigenossen, eine gute Regierung ohne Propaganda kann ebenso wenig bestehen wie eine gute Propaganda ohne eine gute Regierung. Beide müssen sich einander ergänzen. Und wenn die jüdischen Zeitungen heute glauben, auf versteckte Drohungen die nationalsozialistische Bewegung einschüchtern zu können, wenn sie heute glauben, unsere Notverordnungen umgehen zu dürfen, sie sollen sich hüten. Einmal wird unsere Geduld zu Ende sein und dann wird den Juden das freche Lügenmaul gestopft werden.
Diese Verschwörung von Demokraten, Juden und Freimaurern hat es damals fertiggebracht, vor 2 Jahren, zunächst Europa in den Krieg zu stürzen. Es mussten also die Waffen entscheiden. Seitdem nun findet ein Kampf statt zwischen der Wahrheit und der Lüge. Und wie immer wird dieser Kampf für die Wahrheit am Ende siegreich ausgehen. Das heißt mit anderen Worten, was immer auch die britische Propaganda, was immer auch das internationale Weltjudentum und seine demokratischen Helfershelfer zusammen lügen mögen, an den historischen Tatsachen werden sie nichts ändern.